But thank you all for coming to this particular annual meeting. It's been great. This is a large number of folks. I think it's 60 more registers than last year. I think it's fantastic. So thank you all for being interested. Thank you all for being interested. Thank you all for being pleasant. It's been a great. I love meeting you all. I like being able to chat with you all. And I know that you know I probably don't remember all your names, but I do remember faces pretty well. So first slide that I'm going to get to is what we do every year, which is kind of compare where we were. We started this whole thing in 1946. Our first bills went out in 1947, and if you capture the energy portion of that bill, in 1947, 300 kilowatt hours was $19.50, and in 2018, $24.51. Not a lot of increase over 73 years. It's pretty. I think that's pretty amazing. Next up, I'll talk about the energy dollar. I didn't do this one year. I did an energy pie, and I really got a lot of not great feedback about I need to go back to the energy dollar. So we're back to the energy dollar. In fact, one year I didn't wear my bolo tie. And Paula will attest to you that every call that came in, the first thing they said was, make him wear that tie again. He's supposed to wear his bolo tie. So if you take a look at our energy dollar, over 75% of the cost of us doing business is the purchasing of power or obtaining the power for you. We are a not-for-profit utility. And so we operate a lot like other nonprofits. We are not a nonprofit, but we are a not-for-profit utility. But if you take a look at our actual operating costs, it's just under 15%, it's 14.8%. That's a pretty good number. If you think about, there are a lot of nonprofits that do good work, and they basically bring money in and they try to get money out to folks and get services out to folks. But think about it, we're doing this and we're buying our supplies, buying our power, doing all of this, and we're doing it for less than about the same as any other nonprofit. So I think that's pretty amazing. You see the numbers: depreciation, interest, margins. That's about 3% on our margins. We try to shoot for that. Remember that from a margin standpoint, that's what other people, if you're an investor-owned utility, that's called a profit. And that profit goes to shareholders in an investor-owned utility. But you're our shareholders, so we give that money back to you. We give that money back to you at the end of the year. The idea is to have a positive number, and also kind of point out to you that positive number is required for our lenders. So if we're going to get really good interest rates, low interest rates, we have to be able to show that particular margin. We can't just exactly be at zero. What's happened since 2008, it's probably a little bit self-serving that I do this, but 2008 is when I came, so I can probably talk to you about anything that's happened since 2008. I can't talk to you about what happened before 2008, but in 2008 when I came, you'll see a number of costs going up, but the average MEC residential member costs have gone down 13% since 2008. So we've been working hard for you. The summer emergency. Those of you that came to our meeting, we had a town hall meeting, and folks came to it, but it was also is it live streamed? Is that the term of art? So it was streamed by way of the B, and we really appreciate that. And it got through TV2, and there was a number of places that carried it. And I think we may have had probably 100 people at the meeting, but there was some 4,700 people that were watching by way of live streaming. But what we talked about was last year's issue. We had some issues with. We lost some availability for some power plants, and that happened to couple exactly with a situation in which the power that we were buying, California was in an energy emergency, and California was buying power at any price, and that any price made the summer purchases be between 8 to 10 times higher than any other year. So we had that particular scenario. What are we doing? Well, the one unit that needed to that we couldn't run during the year, that has been, Patrick, is it complete? All right, so it's done. That unit's done, and we've gone through from a maintenance standpoint to make sure that, or try to make sure that the other unit that went down. So we had a problem with 2 units going down right before the summer, one before the summer and one actually during the summer, which caused your fuel cost adder on your bill to move from minus 1.5 cents to minus 3/4 of a cent. So it did go up because we basically incurred about a $3.2 million of additional costs last summer, but we're working on it and we're working hard. We'll look up here after a year of having that fuel cost adder in place. We'll look up and see if we can actually adjust it again to your benefit, of course. But it's still, the positive is it's still a negative. The fuel cost adder is still a negative. We also had a transmission outage issue. We had some microbursts, and the microburst winds that are basically the same speed as a Class 1 tornado that came through and ripped up the system pretty well. And we were out for quite a while. Now, when we were out for quite a while, we were basically waiting for some of the transmission components to be put back in place. We could have made that outage faster, and we know that. And so what we've done now is we've worked with the transmission providers to make sure that we have materials on hand so we can do as much as we can do and get it back up and get it to a place that it can be energized while they're getting here to energize it. We have an ability to do it if we have the arrangements and we have the material, and now we have the arrangement and materials to actually do that. But you all remember, if you were here during that summer, tore up all the trees at the park. This was quite a windstorm, and it took us quite a bit of time to get it back up. We also are kind of celebrating, and we appreciate you're all here because you all have been engaging with us in a great manner, and we really appreciate it. Our member engagement is fantastic, and it's if you actually look around from a standpoint of both other utilities as well as other co-ops, I'm just going to say unabashedly that you guys are the best, because when it gets time to actually getting something done, you guys step out with us and you get something done. The example is, of course, the billionaire Stiers who came over to try to change our policies in the state to whatever he wanted the policies to be. You guys all stood up, and it was a massive defeat of this initiative in the rural areas. So the rural communities all stood up, and you came out. And I want to kind of pointing out that I think that we were north of 85% people saying no, and less than 15% people saying yes. What does that mean? Well, the governor didn't get 80%. So the best folks in the rural areas who get the most, from a partisan standpoint, the most votes, we're talking about 60 and 70%. You guys rose up and made sure that they heard that we don't need Californians' help into figuring out how we operate. So. And we appreciate that. We really do appreciate that. And every time we've asked, you guys have standing up. So a couple of things that I'm going to talk about that you may or may not get involved in, and hopefully at some point that you do. It may be a foreign concept to some extent. The Arizona Corporation Commission, which they're in Phoenix, and there are 5 elected entities, and those folks come from basically the Phoenix metropolitan area and the Tucson area. And that in itself isn't a bad thing, but they tend to forget that we're a little bit different because we're in the rural areas. And you probably are well aware of an issue that has gone on that did go back to the Corporation Commission, which is the EPCOR issue, right? And And it's really not, it's not been something that we've reached out to people to, can you reach back out to the Arizona Corporation Commission, but we're going to be talking to you about reaching out to the Arizona Corporation Commission yourselves, because now they have the way that they do it, you can electronically file your comments if you need to file them. And so we're going to point out to a couple of things. There's a policy debate right now dealing with electric vehicles. And it's not the electric vehicles per se, it's providing the infrastructure for the charging. And that sounds like it's a good public policy debate, and it's a good thing to consider public policy. But what the ACC is thinking about doing is making the utilities do all of the charging stations instead of it being a private business scenario. And if you look at it, in most any other places, it's private businesses that actually do this. If you go over to the casinos over in Laughlin, they have charging stations, and they have that because it makes business sense for them. They want to draw you in, they want to get you in and have you spend maybe some time in the casino while you're charging your vehicle. But actually having it be the utility's responsibility, you're basically finding a way, in my mind, is that you're avoiding a public policy and a taxing issue by taxing the utility customers themselves to put these in. And there's not a really good feel for the fact that in the rural areas, we probably don't have the proliferation of electric vehicles like they do in the metropolitan areas. Not only that, but if you look at it from the big metropolitan areas, that's where the majority of the fog and smog issues are, is in those areas because they have a huge number of vehicles. So in their effort to do one size fits all, we'll all get rolled over with the same scenario having to do with electric vehicles. It's something that you should actually consider. You should consider actually talking about it, because what this does is if we have to put in electric vehicle charging stations, and if we have to end up putting them in for just the people that have electric vehicles, you're paying for the additional infrastructure for someone to get that, and it's not everyone. And that's kind of, our mentality is that we don't mind doing stuff for everyone, but the difficulty is doing stuff for just a few people. So it's something you ought to really probably talk about. And that policy debate is going on right now. Another policy debate, and from my standpoint, this is another public policy debate. We all are well aware that the federal government does really a poor job in managing the forest. Can we all agree with that? It's just really terrible job in it, and it's predominantly it's either state or forest lands that all of the forests actually exist in. But the commission is trying to basically say, look, here's what we want to do is we want to make you buy an output of a generator that is fueled by the leftover biofuel that's in a forest. Now, it may be a great idea, and it is a fine idea, but it's hard for me to actually make the nexus to why that's your responsibility as a utility, or any utility's responsibility. It's a great public policy question, and there should be a lot of people that would be involved in that particular public policy question, but it's really just a tax. In my standpoint, it's a tax on you, our ratepayers. And if it was and trust me, if it was economically viable, meaning I like the price of that power such that it would be good for my members, I'd be interested in it. But from a standpoint of avoided costs, what do I pay right now? It's about 7 times the cost of what I pay right now. So they'd be requiring me to pay for something 7 times more expensive than what I pay for in order to help the forest industry. I believe it's an important issue. I believe that managing our forests are incredibly important. I'm just not so sure it's your responsibility as ratepayers. And by the way, when they talk about this, they talk about the folks that are under the purview of the Corporation Commission. And I can imagine you'd think, well, that's all right because it's all the utilities in the state would all be playing under the same rules. No, it's not. Not all the utilities in the state are regulated by the Corporation Commission. So it's a subset of utilities that would be paying this particular tax. It's something else you should probably be thinking about. From an advocacy standpoint, we also appreciate that when you are helping us advocate. But one of the things that we are advocating about is a tax law change. When the tax law changed a year ago, when that tax law went into place, there was a provision in there that we think was an inadvertent provision that threatens the co-op's 85-15 rule. What does that mean? What that means is, in order for us to stay a non-taxable entity, so we're not taxed by the federal government because we're not for profit or non-profit, in order for us to stay that way, 85% of our revenues have to come from the operation of what we're doing, which is you. Only 15% can come from outside sources. What this actually meant is that, let's say you had an issue that would be a FEMA issue. Let's say you had a tornado go through, or you had hurricane issues, and we're all aware of the hurricane issues that went on the East Coast, right? Those folks, if they actually applied for a FEMA grant, that FEMA grant would push them over the limit, and they would become federal taxable by accepting the grant. So they would be stuck with, if not helping their members by taking that grant. And I appreciate you shaking your head, know that that's a bad idea. So we are working on that particular thing. And the good news is most of our delegation, both in the House and both of our senators, are right behind it. And we appreciate that because you've made it known, indirectly or directly, that when it comes down to the co-op, that our state folks, the folks in the state as well as our federal folks, that they all recognize that they ought to listen to us when we have a problem. So we appreciate you helping us with that advocacy. There's another advocacy issue that is passed right now in the House. It got passed out very well, very quickly, and it got passed out 400 and something to 3 or 6 or some single-digit number. But what it was ourselves, as well as other nonprofits or not-for-profits like the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, when we have a pension plan, and it's a large pension plan, meaning that all of us join up, so somewhere just south of 900 of us co-ops spread out in 47 states, that somehow the interpretation was that that's one pension plan, and that one pension plan's at risk of going broke, like a city pension plan or something else. And so we were and still are paying higher premiums than we actually need to be paying. We're paying high premiums on as if we were an at-risk particular venture. And if you think about it this way, since co-ops were formed, nobody's gone bankrupt, and the probability of 900 of us all at one time going bankrupt is kind of ridiculous. So we've been working really hard. I guess it's 417 to 3. That's the number. We work hard on the Secure Act, and again, we thank you because we know that our federal folks know that when we come and ask that you're behind us. So that member engagement extends to other things that you guys are all doing. Our Operation Cool Shade, we sold out of all of the largest number of trees. We sold them out before we actually were distributing them. We had very little to sell that particular day. It was only people who actually didn't show up, or any actually extras that we bought, because we do buy a little bit of extras just in case there are some trees that didn't look very well. So we appreciate that. Classroom grants, we have had a record number of 50 applicants this year, which is amazing. It was just a few years ago that we were begging people to take the money, and can you please come and fill out the grants. And we also have a grant for the schools, and it's a $5,000 school grant that if you can actually create a program in your school that has something to do with energy and renewable energy, we'll give you a $5,000 grant. And we had the Academy of Building Industries that actually created that. They actually turned a school bus into kind of something to grow things in. So I think that's pretty cool. That's talking about Operation Cool Shade, and it's not just that you all came there, but I'll point out that we had a whole bunch of folks from the local community that come and they volunteer to help get this done. You'll see our board members there. You'll see a whole bunch of employees there, and that's all people volunteering on their time. Capital credits, that's that part what I was talking about when we at the end of the year have extra dollars, more than our operating needs. What do we do with that? We give that back to you. And so this spring you got $1.7 million back. I think that's pretty impressive. Now, I mean, I didn't get 1.7. I got $3.35 on my bill. But you either got a credit on your bill or you got a check. That's typically how it works. But I also want to point out that our G&T, which is where we Generation Transmission Co-op, in which we get the majority of our power from, they also retired some patronage capital as well, and it was some $400,000, I think was the number, wasn't it? Was it our number? You don't remember it either, because I hurried up and cashed the check and made sure we could get it to you. But we turned around and gave that money right to you. So they gave it to us and we gave it to you, and I think it's a real rarity, because I don't think there's very many G&Ts in the country who are actually in all of the G&Ts in all the 47 states that are retiring patronage capital at all. So we thank you, Patrick, for retiring that some $400,000. From the classroom grant standpoint, we've got, there was one classroom grant that we're pointing to at River Valley High School. Those students took the money and they turned it over into an entrepreneur type thing, in which they started to sell water bottles and shirts and that type of thing. So they turned their $200 grant into $1,000 and counting. They're bringing into the school. So we think that was pretty wild, pretty incredible. There's the Academy of Building Industries with that $5,000 grant, and so it's kind of I guess it's a greenhouse is what it is, and they've been growing vegetables and fruit, and they actually use the vegetables and fruit in their school lunch program. So it's kind of a really cool deal. Also, from a community involvement standpoint, about a year ago or so, the board said, "Hey, Tyler, we'd like you to expand our connection with our veterans. We already have a Veterans Resource Center in which we support, but let's expand that some. What else can we do? Because we are worried about the number of homeless veterans that are in our area." Or in any area, but we're trying to take care of our own from a community standpoint. So we worked with Catholic Charities and Legacy, and they were building and it's in process of being built right now. They're building a transitional homeless shelter, and what that is to try to provide the transition as well as the education, try to get people to be able to come from homeless to not homeless. And that was the idea. We came to them and said, "Hey, if we'll help, and we'll put some money in, and we'll put some solar on the top of that if you create a special part for the veterans." So what we have up here is, you'll see it in the yellow way on the left. That's an addition that we got instituted, and so it's being built right now. It's off of Miracle Mile and Old Oatman Road. So if you go there and you see that building, catacorny from the Dodge dealership, that's being built right there, and by the end of this year, there'll be a number of beds that are specifically focused on, not just focused on veterans transition, but also training and personnel to help them transition from homeless and get them access to all of the benefits that they need to get access to. So we're pretty excited about that coming up. And there it is, it's being built, and the one closest to you, that's the veterans part right there. And we know that we can't solve the veterans homeless issue, but we're doing our best. And you know, all that any business can do is try to do something and do their best. We can't solve every problem, but we're out there trying to do what we can do. From a community support standpoint, the Chamber of Commerce, if you've ever driven by, you see the tortoise there, but you see that old sign. That old sign is that type of sign where you take a stick and you slide the you slide the numbers in it, and then they blow away. We have a little bit of wind here once in a while, and they blow away, and so we've been trying to get a digital signboard, but as you know, the chamber operates off of not a whole lot of money. So one of the things we did is we worked with the chamber to try to replace this, and so the reason why that picture is there and there's nothing on there, here in the next few weeks that should be replaced, and it'll be a digital sign that can be programmed from inside of the building. And thank you. We're glad you're happy about it too. We're very happy about it. We don't like paying for advertisement and the letters all blow off, so we want to pay for some advertising that works. But one of the things we did is we worked with the USDA, and you know, Artie's here, right? Where's Artie? Artie Loxman, where are you? Where's Artie? Did he had to go back? Well, when he comes back in, make sure somebody yells at me so I can identify him. But Artie really put a lot of work into the USDA, so we were able to get a loan from the USDA for the sign for the chamber, and that loan, when it's all done, will be less than a 1% loan. So that the chamber is going to be able to deal with that. So. Couple of things we'll talk about, with all the things we're doing and everything we're talking about doing, every year we compare ourselves to every other co-op in the United States, all 47 states, and we compare ourselves by way of our financial data, and it's called a key ratio trend analysis. We just call it a KRTA, is what we call it, and so we get this particular information. So if you take a look at the median for the co-ops that are like us, the median for 2017, and it always seems like it's a little more than a year behind, but you can see the median, you take a look at what our expenses per consumer are, and you can see where we rank, meaning the total number of co-ops are 813 that participated. Our rank is 734. That means the 813th one is the lowest cost. We are just about the lowest cost per consumer, what it costs us to run this business. So when you're looking at all of these employees, you're meeting all these employees, these folks are working hard, and they're not just working hard, they're really good employees. And it's one thing to have employees that are working hard, it's another thing to have really good employees, and we do. And then when you talk about, if you want to look at it from this standpoint, let's just look at Arizona to see where we sit in Arizona. Well, we're number 11 out of number 11, so we're the lowest cost in all of the state of Arizona. So when you think, and I've had people tell me, well, do you guys actually compare yourselves? Well, yeah, we do. We do comparison. We do benchmarking all the time. Every year we do benchmarking, and if we find ourselves going astray somewhere, then we sit down to make some improvements. But at this particular point, we are number one. As far as lowest cost, we are the lowest one. And as far as all of the people that Patrick serves, we, again, are the lowest cost of all the folks that Patrick serves, that we get our power from EPCO. A little discussion about what are controllable costs. That's what goes in that bucket. And you can read them. I'm not going to read them all to you, but they're all expenses, transmission expenses. Operations are the folks that operate the call center, the folks that you see out, that when you have an outage, they're right out there. And you know they're out there and they're friendly and they're doing their best even when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and it's still 105 degrees out. They're out there, and they are out there, and they're out there when the lightning's out there. The customer accounts expense, those are the folks that you see at Hancock, sales and marketing, administrative in general. These are part of the controllable costs that we are one of the lowest in the nation of. But I also will point out to you that some of the controllable costs and some big chunks of controllable costs are things like property taxes. Is that very controllable? No, but that's in this bucket too. How about insurance? Is that very controllable? Not really very controllable. Health insurance, you all know what happens with health insurance. That's all part of this bucket. So we think we're really doing a good job, and we think the board does a great job in paying attention to it as from everybody else's standpoint. Now, are you all aware that you have an opportunity at times to give $1 or round up on your bill, and where does that go? That goes to the river fund. And the River Fund has a specific task when we give them money, and that specific task is to make sure that it's applied to utility customers that are under duress that need help. And that could be low income, or it could be somebody who just at the moment is suffering a problem. And so that money, and that's, you see that that 8,000 and that Operation Roundup, those are the dollars. If you put $1 in there, it goes to From the Heart. Operation Roundup is when you just ask the system to round up your bill to the next whole number, and those pennies or dimes and nickels, they go over there. But they mean something. They're not inconsequential. We also work with one of our lenders, and because we have a program, one of our lenders, which are CoBank, that they've created a program in the last few years that if you're giving money to a local charity, they will give money to the local charity. So they pop up with that $5,000. The energy assistance is an annual thing that the board takes a look at and says, do we have money from a certain pot that we can give, and that's a $35,000 gift. Utility deposit and appliance assistance, we also do that. What is that? Well, I'll tell you what it used to be. It used to be that when somebody left and they had a deposit, that deposit used to be cheated by the state, and the state would then use that money to divvy out, and we've interrupted that process, and now that money goes to the River Fund, and the River Fund administers it in the same fashion, but it doesn't go to the state where we have to beg back for it coming back from the state. What do you think the probability is if we were sending the $32,000 to Maricopa County, that our chances of getting that back? So what we've done is we interrupted that, and that's what goes there, about $5,000 from MEC direct donations. So that's $92,000 this particular year to the River Fund to help the folks that need the help. And that's all you guys' help too. They're pretty amazing. And I was asked before at some particular point, well, how much have you guys given since the inception of the River Fund? And there's that number, just about $800,000 since the inception of the River Fund, and that inception was just 9 years ago. This only shows 8 years ago, so we've given quite a bit of money to help that particular organization. We also have a program, and if you know somebody in need for this type of program, please pay attention to this, and we have folks, Bill and Steve. Where's Bill and where's Steve? There's Steve. Stand up, Steve. Where's Bill? Stand up, Bill. So those two individuals, that if we have people that are at or below the 150% number of the poverty, 150% of federal poverty line, we have a specific program for you that we will help you weatherize your home, and that could be helping you get a new air conditioner, that could be insulation, that could be window coverings, that could be just the weather stripping, could be all kinds of that stuff. But we have a program for you to help, and our idea is not to give you, help you with your electric bill directly, but to help you so your future electric bills are low. And we have a program with WACOG, which is a Western Area Council of Government, and we also have just recently created an agreement with the Bullhead City itself. And what does that do? Well, if you take a look at those numbers, WACOG and Bullhead City, you can see we're leveraging our money with other money, state money with city money, to make sure that when these houses get fixed, they get fixed very, very well. And so we've got 21 folks that have gotten $352,000 worth of improvements to their homes that are at or below the 150% federal poverty line. So hopefully those 21 folks in the future are not needing a handout at all. So see these guys. These guys are both at Hancock or send someone to see either these two individuals. And thank you, Bill, and thank you, Steve, for standing up. Now, my wife will say that I can talk for hours and without having a dry mouth, but that's only to her. All right, you can see in the latest talking about it's something that we're always involved in, and we've been involved in for some time. We have nearly $2.5 million worth of installed solar on schools, on public buildings, and on some of the nonprofit buildings such as the Boys and Girls Club. Every school that's in our service territory has some solar on it. The idea always has been is those entities that operate off of some form of taxes, whether it be property taxes or something else, we're trying to lower their operating costs so they can do more with the taxes. That's always now we can all argue about whether or not they're doing it with the taxes, but I'm just saying that's our predisposition. So we've got 3 that we put in this year: Bullhead City Fire Station 6, Fire Station 92, and the Golden Shores Community Center. And that community center is intended for the whole community and predominantly the seniors. And so the folks down there have a community center to go to, and by the way, some of that powering is from the solar. And when we talk about solar, that's one of the things we do. We're focused on, and you all know, we're focused on clean power, and we all ought to be focused on clean power, but clean power also has its place. It's not all-encompassing, man, I can't do everything. So a balanced portfolio is what you need. But I also want to talk a little bit about some other part of balance, because when you hear about clean power and we have to shut this down and shut that down, I want to show you a little bit of information about the power that we have access to. This so-called this very, very dirty power. So here's where we're at with our units at Apache, in which Mr. Ledger is leading. And if you take a look at from a Mercury standpoint, can you see where we're at in 2018? That's a cleanup job. We're getting really, really close to things like what's called clean coal power. But we're not just focused on bringing in resources that are clean. We're also focused on, and I think they're doing a great job in cleaning that. This is the SO2 reductions that are coming out of the power plants. Look at where we've been and look at where we're at. So when folks are talking to you about, well, we're not doing anything and nothing's being done from power itself and cleaning up the actual the rest of the power, whether it be coal or whether it be natural gas, that's really not true. We are actually cleaning that up quite a bit. And there's an NOx reductions. In fact, if you really look at it today, the folks who are suffering from a standpoint of really bad air today are not suffering from power plant reductions. Or where are they suffering? What are they suffering from? Vehicle emissions in the metropolitan areas. So L.A., that type of thing. There's no coal power plants in L.A. Los Angeles. There's no coal power plants there at all. It's all vehicles, and it's the vehicles that actually have to get cleaned up. You guys helped us on the assigned capital credits, and we appreciate that. That's when you went back and you gave us 6,600 letters to tell our elected officials to make sure that the capital credits stay in the community in which they were developed, and you all did that. So far we've had 43 students representing MEC. You can read this from Monica, and she really enjoyed it. She loved her particular time there. And it really was a great experience. And also she came with us when we actually delivered the 6,600 letters. She came with us to Phoenix to meet with our elected officials, so she could tell them how important the use of those capital credits to send someone like her back to Washington with. So it was very, very cool. And of course, we have a whole lot of assigned capital credit kind of success stories. This is particularly one of them, about a classroom grant. 18 teachers got the $200 each for the classroom grant, and one of them is actually, this is kind of cool, but they're actually working on forward-looking infrared camera technology, and it's really kind of a cool thing. I mean, it's a program that they couldn't have, and they didn't have, and they did the classroom grant, so they had the money to be able to do it. So there are teachers that want to do unique and special things, and they don't have that ability because it's going to come out of their particular pocket. Co-op Connections Card Program, from prescription drugs alone, you guys have saved $2.2 million since 2011 on prescription drugs. That's just amazing. It doesn't just speak to your use of it, but it speaks to the need that obviously is a big need in the community. And before I go to definitely the last but not least, we didn't have slides on this, but this is the question I've been asked all week, and I was asked at least probably maybe 10 times today, which is, y'all probably want to know about the internet thing, right? That's what people want to know about. So, what's that? Sure, you want to know about the internet thing. All right. We some time back, and not very long ago, we have been getting a whole lot of input from our members that have said, look, we just are not liking the service we're getting from our internet providers, and the internet providers seem to have lost interest in providing customer service or even being visible in the community. So, or they are in the community, but they're limited in the services they can provide. So we went out with a survey, and it's a market survey to figure out what the interest was, and we really got a great response. The TWN folks that were here were part of that particular service, and I want to make sure that you know the service that was offered by TWN over the last few years. That particular service is a unique style of service, but not the service that we're talking about. It's like apples and oranges. We're talking about fiber optic to the home or to the business. So, and we know that schools, and we know the libraries, and know the people and folks themselves. I mean, I've got kids that are gamers, and they are on all the time, and they're soaking up huge amount of bandwidth, and that's kind of the what's happening in today's world. So that the having robust internet's pretty important. So we've been hearing this from folks, including a lot of elected officials. Why don't you guys provide internet? So we went out with that particular survey. The survey results were really good. I couldn't immediately look at them and say they were really good, but apparently your results were about 3 times what happens in other communities that have actually deployed internet. So you guys came out with 3 times of a higher response rate, and as well as your what they call the take rate, meaning how likely are you to take the service. The numbers normally are is somewhere between 70 and 80% is the decision point. If it's over 80%, you ought to probably go forward. And you guys were 95% is what you all said, is 95% would take it. So apparently that's what you want. So, and since we work for you, and that's what you want, and you own it, what we're doing right now is we're doing a feasibility study, a real in-depth cost-benefit analysis to make sure, now that we have all the data, that can we turn that data, what does it take to actually build the infrastructure to do this, and how do we build it out and build it and get it to you, and can we do it at a cost that's equal to or less than your existing provider, and at a service level that's higher than your existing provider? Can we do that? And so that's what we're doing right now, and because we are business people, so we're not going to do this unless the business case says that. So that's what we're doing right now, and it's a fairly in-depth process to go through this. And we're paying attention to dotting the I's and crossing the T's to make sure that if we actually offer the service, that we can provide it and you all can get benefits. So does that answer pretty much your questions? That's the next step. All right, fantastic. And no, we don't want to be in the water business. So we keep asking that one too. I get that every time I go somewhere. Will you guys do the water business? But I say no, but really, if you guys demanded we do that, if you know that we would do it. But the water and the power business don't necessarily match very well. Water and power really don't match all that great. But of course, you guys are the ones, so you guys will tell us. So that's the answer to that. The last but not least that I want to talk about, as I said it earlier, is that we have made a lot of changes since I've been here. There have been a lot of folks that have left, and there's been a lot of folks that are still here with the co-op. And what I'll say is we've lost some folks that we wish that we wouldn't lose. I'll say that we lost some folks that I'm not unhappy that we lost. That's what happens. But the folks that we have are really, really great folks. And not only are they really great in what they do, and it's a great bunch of folks, but pay attention to what they do in the community. And this is what they do. This is how they volunteer. And we don't pay them to do this, by the way. We're not paying them. I worked at a company that was an investor-owned utility at some point, and we were paid to volunteer. This isn't paying to volunteer. This is folks that are doing it because it comes out of their heart. They believe in this particular community. And here's the start of that list of where our people volunteer. I'm not going to read them all. You can read them. But this is the start. There's the next page of where our folks volunteer. And you'll find that people, when they volunteer, they don't just volunteer for one thing. People that volunteer, they're out there a lot. There's the next page of what our folks and how we volunteer and how these folks are out there in the particular community. Now, I think a lot of companies would be really proud if they had 30% of their employees volunteering. Wouldn't you think so? Do you think that that's a pretty good sized number? Yeah, ours is 75%. And that's these people right here. So when you see them, turn around and tell them, yeah, thank you, because they're really involved in this particular community. And that's it. That's what I got. Thank you very much for attending.